Hello, hopefully this is helpful, but I'm going to try and go through as many questions as I can on string 2 in about half an hour. So here we go. So first I'm going to do cat dog, your prototypical or pretty typical counting style problem. I'm going to make a variable called number of dogs I've seen. I'm going to make a variable called number of cats I've seen. The question is see how many times the word cat shows up in the array and how many times dog shows up in the string, and return true if you see cat the same number of times as you see dog. So this one's true. You see cat once, you see dog once. This one's false because you see cat twice and dog not at all. So I'm going to have counters for both of these. Not that you can't do it with one if you make cats positive and dogs negative or some such. And then I'm going to do my prototypical for loop. I'm going to say, so I'm going to start I at 0, the first index. I'm going to say I plus my word size, cat and dog are both size 3, is less than or equal to str.length. Not the only way you can do it, but easiest to remember perhaps. And I'm going to go up by 1 each time. Remember that, so I look at these 3 characters, and then these 3 characters, and then these 3 characters, just a group of 3 letters starting at I. So I'm just going to have 2 little if statements here. If I see cat, if the substring, because I got to get part of a string, I comma I plus my word length, again dog and cat both are length 3. If that equals cat, oops, then I want to increase my cats by 1, cats. And then if I see dog, I want to increase dogs by 1. So if the group of 3 letters starting at I is cat, I increase my cat counter by 1. If my group of 3 letters starting at I equals dog, I increase my dog counter by 1. If I get to the end, I'm just going to return, hey, is my cat counter equal to my dog's counter? You could also do like, if this is equal to true, return true, else return false, but this is just better. This is true when there's as many cats in the word as there is dogs in the word, and false otherwise. So doing that, we got them all. So a nice standard counting example. Count code, another standard counting example. In this case, we just got to have one counting variable. We're just looking for the word code, except that the D can be anything. So really, I'm going to look for 4-letter words in this thing, but really I'm only going to check the first 2 is CO and the last one is E, and I'm just going to ignore the 3rd letter in my groups of 4. So again, I'm going to do my standard for loop. So int I equals 0. I'm going to create a variable starting at the first place it could be. I'm going to say I plus my word size. Code is 4 letters big. And that's got to be less than or equal to the string's length. And then basically if I see the word code, except I'm going to be, hey, string.substring, substring, I comma I plus my word size, which is 4 in this case. Oh, sorry, because this is funny and I'm trying to ignore the 3rd letter in every code, so this counts. I'm just going to check the first 2 letters is equal to CO. And I'm going to check that equals CO. And the last letter, that would be the thing at, so I've got I plus 1 should be CO. I plus 2, I don't care what it is because it can be anything. I plus 3 though. I plus 3 is my 4th letter, and that's got to equal an E. Single quotes because it's a char, equals equals because chars are primitives, And if so, I'm just going to increase my counter by 1 because it's a standard counting question. And then I'm just going to return my count at the end. So pretty much just like before, I got a bit of a more finicky condition just because I'm just checking the first 2 letters are CO and the 4th letter is an E for every group of 4 starting at I. So, and that should do her. So we got that guy. And other. So basically we got 2 words that are given to us. And we want to see if the smaller word ends up at the end of the bigger word, but ignoring case. So this guy's still true because our smaller word is at the end if we ignore case. Now, this isn't that hard a problem. We don't even need a for loop, but it is very useful if we know which is the big word and which one's the small word. Which one's the longer string and which one's the shorter string, because it's no problem to check that the last 3 letters of the long word equal the short word, but if I try to say that the last 5 letters of a 3-letter word equal this thing, it'll break. So I need to know which one is bigger. I'm just going to start assuming A is the longer word and B is the shorter word, and I'm going to switch it otherwise. So I'm going to say, hey, if B dot length is bigger than A dot length, I'm switching them. I'm going to create a string called temp, and I'm going to make it equal to A. I'm going to say A is equal to what's in B, and then I'm going to say B is equal to temp. So that's kind of like standard code for switching 2 strings. So now, if A was the longer string, none of this happens. But if B was the longer string, now it's an A. So guaranteed at this point, A is the longer string because we flipped which one was A and which one was B if B was longer. So at the end of this, A is my long string. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to check that the part of A, the big string, in fact, the last, you know how if we did string.length minus 5, we get like the index of the 5th last character? Oh, sorry, it's not str, it's A. A is my bigger string. So if we did A.length minus 5, that would be the 5th last character. And if we give substring a number like this, say the 5th last index of the 5th last character, it'll go from that to the end, so it'd be the last 5 characters. But in this case, we don't want the last 5 characters, we want the last b.length characters. So now that's equal to the last b.length characters of A, the longer string. And I want to check that that equals, ignoring case, because this cares about case, that equals B. And that's it. The long thing, the last b-length characters of A equals the shorter string, which is B. And then we do that and we got it all. Notice this one doesn't fall nicely into any category, but there you are, a little tricky. Next guy, XYZ there. So here's kind of a mostly simple true-false style question. So let's go over that. So for your standard true-false style question, you're just going to do a little for loop, standard for loop, int I equals 0, I plus the word length we're looking for, in this case 3, is less than or equal to the string's length. And I plus plus, because we're going to look at every group of 3 letters to look for X, Y, Z. And then I'm going to say, hey, if the string dot substring starting at I and I plus my word length, which in this case 3. First index I want, first index I don't want. This grabs the 3 letters of str. starting at index I, length 3. And I want to check that that equals x, y, z. And I'm not quite going to get it right the first time. I'm going to ignore the period for the moment. And if that, and I'm just going to return true if I ever find x, y, z. If I find it, I found the thing I'm looking for. If I get to the end of it and never found the thing I'm looking for, I'm going to return false. Now, this mostly works, except it does not look at the period at all. So it will not ignore an x, y, z that has a period before it. But notice we still get most of them right. It's just the only ones that just have x, y, z with a period before it, because we're not looking for it yet. So now the only place we gotta handle that is in our condition. We just gotta change our condition to look for a period before it. So I'm just gonna look for a period before it. I'm still not quite gonna get it right this time, because I do want to let you think about this a little more. So I'm just gonna check that the thing at I minus 1 it does not equal a period. If the thing before does not equal a period, then we're pretty much in business. I can't think of any situation where this wouldn't work. And look, we pretty much got it. It handles the anything starting with the XYZ fine, unless we've got XYZ right at the beginning without a period in front of it. Because it can't, because it starts right at the beginning. So it's almost like there's no point in looking for a period in front of it if we're starting at index 0, if I is 0. So here's how we're going to fix that. We're going to use a guard, a short circuit statement evaluation. So we're going to say, hey, we want to look for the word XYZ, and either we want I to equal 0, in which case it can't have a period before it, or the thing before it is not a period, because either of those will handle it. So it will not check this if this is true, because true ORed with anything else is always true, so the computer doesn't even look. If it already knows what the answer is to this OR, it doesn't even need to look at the second thing. So anyway, this should handle it. We're using a guard. It's beautiful. Love the guards. It's good times. Bob there I've already done in my other strings 2 video, so I'm going to leave that. I will go on to XY balance. This one, if you look through my edX course, I didn't do any practice questions on there, but there is a section telling you how to use indexOf and lastIndexOf. And well, actually, why don't I do the non-one-line method? So really here, all you're looking for is there a y to the right of every x? So it is, if you're kind of almost, if you're looking at it right to left, do you see the y before you see any x? So this is kind of like a true false thing, which is kind of funny. So I'm just going to for loop it. Int I equals 0. If you want to do the normal way, we could say, hey, we're only looking at a letter at a time. You can do it this way if you want. So it's kind of like a word of length 1. I'd normally just say I is less than string.length, but if you're really loving my method, then this is how you do it. And basically, if I see a y, oh, crud, sorry, I'm doing this wrong. This should be, we want to do this backwards, so this should be string.length minus 1. So we're looping through it backwards. This is the last index. And we want to keep going. Well, I is greater than or equal to 0. And we want to do I minus minus. So this is basically how you would loop through something backwards, assuming you're only looking for something of length 1. Yeah. So anyway, so if we see if the str.char at I is equal to a y, if we see the y first, we're going to return true. It's got a y after every single x. Notice if you hit a return, like your method's done, so it's not going to check anything else. Else if it's an x, we're going to return false. So if we run into an x first, we want to return false, because that would mean that x doesn't have a y after it. Because if we hit a y first already, we're done. This method would have ended. And if we get to the end of all of it and didn't see an x or a y, it actually counts as true. So we're going to return true if we get to the end of it and never saw an x or a y. If we do this, works great. So this is probably how you were expected to solve this problem. We're just looping through it backwards, so really look at this until it makes sense. We're starting I at the last index in the string. We keep going while it's greater than or equal to 0. As soon as it hits -1, we stop, and we subtract 1 each time. And this is how you set it up if you're looking at things a letter at a time. If you're looking at words, if you wanted to look for words, you could do it this way. Just minus your word length. So if you're looking for something of length 2, you could do -2. If you're doing something of length 3, you could do -3. And that will work. All right, here's how you one-line it. Know how lastIndexOf works. Look it up in my edX classroom. And you just want to say, hey, string.lastIndexOf. The index of the last time it sees y. If that is greater than or equal to str.lastIndexOf x, that means the y comes after every x. The only time they could be equal is if they're both not in the string, in which case, if it never sees a y, this would equal -1. And if it never sees an x, this would equal -1. Hence the reason I made it equal, less than or equal to. Do that, notice it also works. Some of these indexOf and lastIndexOfs can be handy with the right problem. Next thing we got is mixed string. So mixed string, you're just trying to kind of interleave. You're given 2 strings, A and B, and you want to do like first letter of A, first letter of B, second letter of A, second letter of B, third letter of A, third letter of B, which would be fine, except it gets a little annoying in that a lot of the times there's one string that's longer than the other, and you do interleaving as long as you can, and then just have the rest at the end of the longer one. Here's how I do it. So this is string builder 1, so I'm going to create a string. I'm going to call it whatever the heck I want, and going to leave it as an empty string. I'm also going to create this like int holding the length of the shorter string. And I'm going to use something called math.min here, which you can look up if you don't remember it. It's in my edX course. It's a little bit further. After arrays, there's this the math class. Anyway, you give it 2 numbers, it's equal to the smaller number. And I'm just going to do a.length and b.length. So it's equal to the smaller of a's length and b's length. Whichever one's smaller, that's what it is. And then I'm just going to do a pretty typical for loop. I'm going to do int I equals 0. I is less than min length. And then I plus plus. So basically, as long as you're less than the length of the shorter string, you can interleave. Like you can add 1 letter from A and 1 letter from B. So we're going to do our or interleaving, or one than the other. And we'll just say result plus equals, I'll just do it this way. Result equals result plus a dot char at I plus b dot char at I. Now, this will be a little funny. If I used plus equals here, it wouldn't work, because if you add a char to a char, you just get an int, oddly enough. But if you do a string plus a char, you get a string. So this, it'll go left to right. It'll evaluate a string plus a char to a string, and then the result of this gets added to a char, so you got a string and a char as a string. So it'll work nicely. So a little careful there. Now if I just return result, we're getting everything. As long as they're equal length, we got it perfect. This does the interleaving perfect. We just don't have the extra bits on the end. So here's the delightful trick. So you know how substring gives you, if you just give it one number, it goes from that index to the end? Or not str.substring, a.substring. Funny little thing about that. Let's say a was the shorter string. So we're giving a.substring and then putting in its length. This doesn't break it. You can put in something's length, but then it's just equal to the empty string, which is perfect because we don't want to add anything extra from the shorter one. We don't know if a is shorter, so it's an empty string if it's the shorter one, or if it's any remaining letters that haven't been interleaved if it's the longer one. And we can do the same thing to B. Do that. And we got them all. So yeah, this uses a nice little trick. So it's guaranteed to do the extra letters of the longer one tacked on to the end of result, which is the interleave bit. Because the shorter one just gets ignored, because if you just give it its length, it's equal to the empty string, and the longer one is equal to whatever remaining letters you got. Next guy. Repeat end. Not so bad, this one. It's kind of a string builder one. A little bit of a different for loop. So we've got an empty string to start off with. We do our little for loop. In this case, I'm just going to do a for loop that's going to execute n times. So I'm going to say int I equals 0, I is less than n, I plus plus. By the way, this one would work great for a while loop too, if you prefer. You can also do int I equals 1, I is less than or equal to n. You can count backwards if you want. So there's like a zillion ways you could do this as a for loop or a while loop. It just has to loop n times because we're given the string an n. We want the last n letters of string n times. So all we're going to do is every time we pass through loop, we want to add the last n letters of string. So if anytime we want a part of a string, we do substring. In this case, and if we just give it one number, it'll go from that index to the end. So to get the last n letters, we'll do str.length. If we did -3, that would be the last 3 letters. If we did length -4, that would be the last 4 letters. If we do -n, it's the last n letters. And then we just return result. And that should do it. That's just it. The last n letters, n times. And that's all you need. Repeat front. Very similar, except it's supposed to get shorter each time. So in this case, we kind of want to count down, which you can do using that while loop that got smaller, like the one I mentioned in a previous section talking about the XY balance. So the XY balance in the longer way, I had something count down. So you could set up a for loop like that. Again, it is a string builder, so we're going to have string whatever the heck we want to call it. I'm calling it pizza this time just to spice things up. This also works actually really good in a while loop. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to say, hey, well, n is greater than 0. I'm just going to add to my pizza just being the string I want to end with. I'm going to get the first n letters of pizza. So if I'm getting part of the string, I need to use substring. First index I want is 0 because I want to start at the beginning. And first index I don't want is index n. That'll get me the first n characters. And then I'm just going to subtract 1 from n each time. If I do that, oh, it doesn't work because I haven't returned anything. I need to return pizza, pizza being my result. And there we go. Nice, easy way to do it. Again, you can do a for loop counting down if you prefer. Oh, next guy. Repeat separator. So this one's a little funny. It's a bit annoying. So there's a bunch of different ways you could do it. It is a string building one, so I'll do the string empty string thing. Now, I'm going to just for loop int I equals 0, I is less than count minus 1. So I'm going to have it loop count minus 1 times. So this is just a for loop that's going to loop this many times. Actually, whatever, this will work. And so I'll take my results. I will add my word. I will add my separator. And then at the very end, I'm going to say, hey, if count was not equal to 0, if count was not 0, I'm going to return result dot substring 0 comma, or no, hold on. I will do result plus equals word to get the last word in. And then I'll just return result. And I think this will work. Yes. All right, this one's a little sneaky. So I just add the word and the separator count minus 1 times because I don't want an extra separator at the end. And then as long as count wasn't 0, I add the word 1 last time. Yeah, like for this one, for 2 times instead of 3, I'll add the word and the separator x. So twice I add that. And then since count was not 0, I tack on an extra word at the end, and then I return it. This works pretty good. Even like the trick with this one is they'll throw like a count is 0. And so that's why you need this business. Anyway, a little bit of a finicky one. I'll do one more. Prefix again. Given a string, consider the prefix string made of the first n characters of the string. Does that prefix string appear somewhere else in the string? Assume the string is not empty and that n is in the range 1 to string.length. This is a really good one for a string method, either indexOf Or there's a method called contains, which I'll show you here, which is delightful. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to return str.substring 1. So that's everything in the string except for the first character. I'm going to say that contains str.substring 0, n. And let's just check this works. Yes, it does. All right, so here's what's going on here. So I'm looking for the first n letters in the string. So in this case, I'm looking for A somewhere else in the string. So this is the first n letters of string. I'm using this method called contains. Contains is called by a bigger string. So this bigger string is checking if it contains this smaller string. And it's true if it does contain it, and it's false if it doesn't. Now, the reason I did str.substring 1 rather than just str is if I did str, it would definitely contain the first n letters right at the beginning. Like, if I'm looking for an A and I use the whole string, it would find this A. If I'm looking for AB, and I've got this whole string, it would find this AB. So I just need to get rid of the first letter. So I'm looking for, like in this situation, I'm looking for A, but in the rest of the string. So I don't get the first n characters starting right at the beginning. Yeah, that's about it. So this is just to shorten the string by getting rid of the first character so it does not find the first instance of the first n characters. Maybe we'll do one more just for fun. XYZ middle. This one, you could do it with a for loop. You don't really need to. Basically, if it's odd, it should be like smack in the middle. And otherwise, I don't know. Maybe... I don't know whether to do this with a for loop. I'm going to do this not with a for loop. You can think about how to do it with a for loop if you would like. I'm going to say if str dot length mod 2 is equal to 1. So if it's an odd number, I'm going to return, if it's an odd number, like if I'm looking at this guy, it's got 7 letters. 7 divided by 2 with integer division is 3, which would be the index of the center letter. And any other odd thing will be the same. So I'm going to say return str.substring. Maybe I'm going to find the mid. Int mid equals str.length divided by 2. So that's the midpoint. In this case, for this one, it's the index of the very middle character. So where the y would be if it's right. So I want to go not from the y, I want to go from the x. So I'm going to do mid minus 1 is the first index I want. And so this is mid. This is mid. This is mid plus 1. So this guy would be mid plus 2. So first index I want, first index I don't want is mid plus 2. And I want to check that that equals x, y, z. Then else, I'm going to check. So if it's even, it's either kind of like here or there. So for an even number, say this one, 6. 6 divided by 2, even with integer division, is 3. Notice that's getting the last character in my XYZ if it's in the first place it could be. So it could be either here or here. I've got to check both. So I'm going to do basically the same thing. I'm going to copy it twice. And just adjust my values. So if this is now mid, I'm going to go from mid minus 2 to mid plus 1. And I think the rest of it is the same. Like if I'm looking at these questions, it would be still mid minus 1 to mid plus 2. So if we do that, we'll find out I forgot to throw a semicolon at the end of all this. Well, once I've done that, we'll find out I got it. Oh. We'll find out that I should really just throw an extra if to handle this. So if str dot length is less than 3, I'm just going to return false. It's a quick, easy way to fix it, and then we get them all. So, again, if it's odd, I only have to check one place in the middle, which is just this guy. So if it was odd, just have to check the one place in the middle. Mid being kind of the string.length divided by 2 minus 1 to mid plus 2. And then if it's even, I've got to check this spot for XYZ and this spot, those 3 letters. And so checked for both, and if it's there, rock on. You could also for loop it and just keep track of how many letters you got to the left of it and how many letters you got to the right of it the whole time. And that would work too. Wouldn't be as fast though. Maybe I'll do one more just for delightfulness. All right. Sandwich is 2 pieces of bread with something in between. Return the string that is between the first and last appearances of bread in the given string, or return the empty string if there are not 2 pieces of bread. So this is a great one for indexOf and lastIndexOf. So it'd be like int f for first, maybe first, equals str.indexOf bread. And then maybe I'll do that plus bread's length, because I would want to start at jam here. So that would be index 0 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just the number of letters in bread. So I'm going to do plus 5, because that's the number of letters in bread. So that would be the first index I want. And equals str.lastIndexOf bread. Now, if first is greater than last, maybe greater than equal to last, if they are both not there, I'm just going to return the empty string. So that's what I'm supposed to do if there are not 2 pieces of bread. And then else, I know I've got two different pieces of bread at different points. I know the index of the first one and the index of the last one. I've thrown in the +5, so instead of grabbing the B, it'll start grabbing the J if I use substring with that. So I'm just going to return str.substring first, comma, end. Oop. Sorry. First is greater than or equal to end. There we are. And that's it. That is probably the best way to do it. Love the index of, last index of. It just makes things better sometimes. Hopefully this has been helpful. I guess there's only 6 left that are not in one video or another. So hopefully this is helpful to you. Signing off.